The theater was filled with chatter, laughter, and the bright buzz of excitement that always came before an America's Got Talent performance. The stage lights glowed gold and blue as the audience waited for the next act. Then, suddenly, the entire room fell into a deep, curious silence. From the side of the stage, two elderly women began to walk out slowly. One held a wooden cane, her trembling hand resting on the arm of her companion. The other clutched a small handkerchief, her eyes glimmering beneath the lights. The moment they appeared, the crowd's energy shifted. You could almost hear hearts softening across the room. They stopped at the center of the stage. Simon Cowell leaned forward slightly, studying them with that signature mix of curiosity and caution. "Good evening," he said softly. The taller woman smiled and gave a little bow. "Good evening, sir," she answered, her voice delicate but full of dignity. "My name is Rosario, and this is my best friend, Teresa. We are from Davao City, Philippines." Her accent carried the melody of her homeland, and the audience responded with a warm round of applause. Simon tilted his head. "And, may I ask your ages?" The crowd chuckled lightly, but everyone leaned in for the answer. Rosario grinned shyly. "I am 98, she said. And Teresa, she's 96. We've been friends since we were little girls." Her words brought a quiet awe over the judges' panel. Sofia Vergara smiled widely and said, "That's incredible." Heidi Klum placed her hand on her heart, already charmed. "What are you going to do for us today?" Simon asked. Teresa looked at Rosario, then back at the judges. "We will sing a song we wrote together," she replied. "After the war. We lost everything, but we wanted to remember peace through music." Simon's expression softened in a way rarely seen. "That's beautiful," he said quietly. "Whenever you're ready." The two women turned to face each other, nodding gently. The music began, soft piano notes floating through the room. Then Rosario's voice emerged, fragile yet hauntingly clear. Teresa joined her, their harmonies trembling but perfectly woven together, like two souls still carrying the weight of history. Their songs spoke of loss, of children who never came home, of skies once filled with fire that now held only light. Every note carried years of sorrow and forgiveness. By the time their final line faded, there wasn't a dry eye left in the room. People stood up instinctively, clapping and cheering. Heidi wiped her tears. Sofia whispered, "That was one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard." Even Simon sat back in silence, his expression unreadable, except for the shimmer of emotion in his eyes. The two grandmothers bowed deeply, their smiles small and humble, as if they had just offered the world a piece of their souls. Simon Cowell leaned forward, elbows resting on the desk, his usually sharp expression replaced by something softer, almost vulnerable. The audience was still clapping, some wiping away tears, others just staring in silence at the two grandmothers standing in the middle of the stage. Finally, Simon lifted the microphone and spoke, his voice noticeably gentler than before. "Lola Rosario." "Lola Teresa," he began, pausing as if to steady his voice, "I've heard thousands of performances in my life. But what you just did, that was something entirely different." The audience nodded and murmured in agreement, their faces still wet with emotion. Rosario smiled faintly, her eyes glistening. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. "We didn't come here to win. We came here to share a memory." Simon tilted his head slightly, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "A memory?" he repeated. Teresa nodded. When we were young girls in Davao, during the war, everything was destroyed. We lost our homes, our brothers, our friends. But one night, while we hid in the hills, we started singing, just to stop ourselves from crying. That song became our prayer for peace. The camera zoomed in on Simon's face, his lips pressed tightly together as he blinked hard. He looked away for a moment, visibly fighting emotion. Sofia Vergara reached for a tissue, her voice trembling as she whispered, "That's so powerful." Heidi Klum nodded, still wiping her tears. The crowd was silent again, everyone listening as the two women continued. Rosario looked around the massive theater, her frail hands shaking slightly as she spoke. "For so many years, we sang this song in our small barangay back home. We never imagined we would sing it here, in front of the world." Her words seemed to hang in the air like sacred smoke, delicate, unforgettable. Simon leaned closer, his voice low and sincere. "You didn't just sing a song," he said slowly. "You reminded us what humanity sounds like. The world forgets too easily, but you made us remember." For a long moment, no one moved. Then, as if on cue, the entire audience stood and began to applaud again, louder this time, cheers mixed with sobs. Even the stage crew clapped from the sidelines. Simon gave a small smile and said, "You know, I've been on this show for years, and I don't cry easily. But this is one of the moments I'll never forget." Rosario reached for Teresa's hand and squeezed it gently. "We promised each other," she whispered into the microphone, "that if we lived long enough, we would sing this one last time, for peace, for forgiveness." The crowd erupted once more, chanting, "Lola! Lola! Lola!" as confetti lights flickered above them, turning that solemn moment into something both heartbreakingly sad and beautifully eternal. When the applause finally began to fade, Simon Cowell was still standing. His eyes glistened with unshed tears, and his voice trembled as he spoke. "You know," he began slowly, "sometimes the most powerful performances aren't about perfection. They're about truth, and you two just gave us the most honest performance I've ever seen." His words carried across the entire theater, drawing another wave of emotion from the crowd. Rosario and Teresa looked at each other, their hands clasped tightly, their smiles trembling with gratitude. Howie Mandel leaned in next, shaking his head in disbelief. "You didn't just sing," he said, "you shared your lives, your pain, your hope. I don't think anyone here will ever forget this night." Sofia Vergara wiped her cheeks, laughing softly through tears. "I can't stop crying," she admitted. "You're both living proof that love and friendship can survive anything." The camera caught the two grandmothers chuckling quietly, their warmth filling the stage more than any bright light could. Simon exhaled deeply and looked down at the golden buzzer before him. For a long moment, he simply stared at it, the entire audience holding their breath. Then, he smiled, the kind of rare, unguarded smile that showed pure admiration. "You've waited almost a century to sing this song for the world," he said. "And I think the world needs to hear it again." His hand came down firmly on the golden buzzer. A burst of golden confetti exploded into the air, raining down like sunlight. The crowd leapt to their feet, cheering wildly. Rosario and Teresa gasped, covering their mouths in disbelief. Teresa began to cry openly as Rosario steadied her, whispering, "We did it, we finally did it." The music swelled, the same melody they had sung, only this time it played over the sound of thousands of people applauding. Simon stood up and clapped above his head. His voice was thick when he spoke again. You just reminded us that music doesn't belong to any generation, it belongs to the heart. What you gave us tonight will stay with everyone who heard it. As the two grandmothers were escorted off stage, the camera followed them backstage. Crew members hugged them, some still wiping their eyes. Rosario turned to the camera one last time, her wrinkled face glowing under the lights. "We sang this song," she said softly, "so that maybe the world will remember to be kind." Teresa added with a shaky smile, "Even when life breaks you, love can still make you sing." The screen faded to black as their voices echoed one final note together, gentle, peaceful, eternal. Then appeared the final line, "Spread the smile, because even in pain, there is beauty."